I manage our amazing team of real estate professionals here in Brooklyn, and we also cover a bit of Manhattan. We've been at Compass for a little over a year, and we're really happy being affiliated, especially during these rather difficult times. Again, we are doing another seminar Sunday at 10 a.m. If you have no friends that can't make it at this time. And we're going to try to do that every week, Wednesdays and Sundays. So I'll start, and Paul is going to join me, and we'll leave some time at the end for some questions, which you can put in the chat. Basically, our sense of the market is in Brooklyn is that it's pretty decent. I think it depends where you are, what kind of property, but I'd especially say if you're a seller with an apartment or a house with outdoor space, you're in very good shape. Clearly, given the events of the last 2 months, having outdoor space is now considered even that more important. And one of the good things about living in Brooklyn is that people really have access to outdoor space, in a whole variety of ways. Paul's going to go more over numbers, but anecdotally, I could say in the last few weeks, we've been seeing more people sort of looking around the market now that sort of the numbers are going down, and the weather is getting warmer, and there is a sense of a light at the end of the tunnel. That has been our experience, and obviously we don't know exactly when we can be showing apartments or houses, but we're sort of feel like we're getting much closer to that possibility. When that happens, I don't expect open houses. I expect everything by appointment, and there'll be very clear protocols about how to show property, which we will get, I believe, from both the Department of State and from Compass. So Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Probably Rebney will say something about that too.
Correct.
And yeah, and we're preparing for that. I mean, we're preparing to be able to show without having open houses. Video will be involved, I think, quite a bit. And since we're not going to have a lot of face-to-face with buyers, it's going to be really important, I think, to have video, to have digital outreach, and these are all things that we're working on. But that's another conversation. You did mention, that anecdotally you thought that, houses and places with backyards, that interest in those is going to be up. It is up. There are stats that bear that out. Compass.com searches for single-family homes nationwide, and also for places with private outdoor space. Those searches are up 50% each. So that is a big thing. And like Scott said, I have some numbers. I'm going to switch over to my slideshow so you guys can all take a look. So basically, Compass has been aggregating. Oh, hey, Billy, I'm going to need you to enable my screen sharing. Basically, Compass has been doing internal polling, internal surveys. It's since the beginning of April to keep track of what is happening in this non-market, since essentially we don't have a market right now. And once Billy gives me this, lets me share. Billy. What we have.
Can you share, Paul?
No. I don't know if Billy can hear me.
Oh.
Billy, can you make the host? Billy, make the host real quick. Okay, great.
There's Samantha.
Yeah, here's my daughter.
Hey, Samantha.
Sorry about that.
Here we go. No problem. Okay, so Lisa and I had received an offer on a place that we had listed prior to the shutdown and kept active during the shutdown. So there's an example, but it was the minority of deals. We did another survey later on in the month. So between April 15th and April 30th, if you submitted an offer or received an offer for a client, was it accepted or rejected? So 35% of offers were accepted, actually. 35 out of 100 out of 100. On those accepted offers, what was the % discount? So this is interesting because, you know, sellers, I think right now are afraid that if they sell, it's going to be fire sale, that they're going to have to take, you know, 20% off of what they were expecting. And I think that there are also buyers out there who are thinking, oh, well, now is the time that I can make lowball offers and I should be able to get something for more than 20% off. Well, here's how things were shaping up at the end of April. So on the 35% of accepted offers, actually almost 30% of those were within 4% of the asking price. Almost 1 out of 6 of those was at the asking price. And then close to half of those were between 4 to 10% off the asking price. It's really less than a third actually sold for, you know, accepted what we would think of a lowball offer, you know, 10% or more off the ask. Now that is the accepted offers, and that is only 35%. The rejected offers you see are a larger proportion were lowball offers, right? So less than a third of the rejected offers were within 10% of the asking price. So what does that mean? I mean, there are certainly a lot of lowball offers going out. We're looking at, you know, of these responses, if you add it all up, that's like 55% of offers were 10% or below the ask. But you do see that deals were happening and they were close to the asking price in many cases. So I don't know, Scott, maybe we can talk real quick right now about what we think that means. To me, that means that properties that are desirable are moving. And, you know, somebody who has probably a house with a lot of outdoor space, a lot of natural light, something that is in a desirable neighborhood, that's going to move.
Yes, I agree. And I also think what we're going to see, and again, I have no, it's just sort of my feeling about what's going on in the market, is that there's a lot of pent-up demand, that people have been sort of sitting on the sidelines for, you know, almost 2 months now. And I think you're going to see, once things start opening up, my guess is that this is actually going to be a good time to put a property on the market. In general, some other properties you might have a harder time, but I'm saying especially what Paul described as something that's special with outdoor space. I think you're probably best off for 2020 putting on the market when we start opening up, because I really don't know what the fall is going to look like. You have the uncertainty of the election. There is some wisdom out there that there might be layoffs in the third quarter among people who are generally our buyers. So my advice, and look, I mean, worst case scenario, if people aren't getting what, you know, the price they want, you can take the property off the market. But I'm of a very strong belief that once things start opening up, we're going to see a lot of activity, and interest rates are low. I think people are going to be surprised how vital the Brooklyn market will be.
So Scott, can I share one more thing? Oh, really, my screen sharing is off again. Anyways, I'll just talk about it.
there's another internal poll, right? And the question was, if you have somebody who took their place off the market or who had planned to put their place on the market now, still can't do it. What are their plans for their property? So
I think you're the host now, so you can do it.
Yeah, here we go. So here's the
Let's
slide.
look at that. That's a good slide, I think.
Yeah. Great. So sellers who were planning to put their place on the market or maybe had their place on the market prior to the shutdown, what are they planning to do? At least as of May 5th, about 47% said they were going to list ASAP. About a sixth said that they're going to wait until either the fall or until next year. But 37% are undecided. So that's like the swing vote, right? The swing voters, I think, in terms of what will happen with the market. If all those people sit out the market, then we only have half of the inventory with a bunch of pent-up demand right now. I don't know that that means that, like, if you have a place that you can be like really aggressive with the pricing and it'll move, but certainly that helps out in terms of supply versus demand. If all 37% of those hit the market, then maybe that's a different story. But that's something that I think we're going to be keeping an eye out on. And there are more stats coming out. We have more polling that just finished up that we're going to get results on tomorrow or Friday. So that's something we can discuss on Sunday.
Yes. No, I think Paul makes a very good point. If people decide to hold their properties off until the fall, you're going to see a lot of demand and very little supply. And Paul and I were on a national call, a mastermind call with different Compass agents from different regions this week. And in markets that are beginning to open up, except at the highest price points, people are seeing a lot of activity, even bidding wars.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be very interesting to see really, what happens in Brooklyn when we're able to have some ability to show again. And the other thing about not having open houses, what does Sammy have over there? Oh, there we go. The other thing about not having open houses in terms of a seller is that I think it'll sort of, there are obviously people that, just take a Sunday to do and go to open houses that aren't serious buyers. Well, that's going to take those people out of the equation, and it's not a bad thing. I think really we want to be just engaging with people that are serious about buying a place to live, and that will, I think, make everyone, I think it'll just make the process sort of more cogent, and we'll just have people that are serious looking at houses and apartments.
Scott, I think my opinion is that you will probably be pretty busy when things open up again. But, like you mentioned earlier, and I said this to you earlier today, I think the fall could be pretty rocky, though, for sellers. With the election, and also, like I said, the things I hear about are that white-collar layoffs will probably happen in the second half of the year. So, I think, at least for my people who are thinking about selling, I mean, you can't rush into a decision necessarily, but I do think the odds are, and time will tell, but you'll probably be better off sooner than later. Because I do think that the recovery actually is slower than we hope.
I think you're probably right. I think, there's a caveat with that, of course, is if a seller is a seller and then a buyer, if once you're in the market, if the value of your property goes down and you're going to buy another property, chances are that the value of the property you're buying goes down. So that's less of an issue. But if it's someone in a position that's really trying to cash out of a lot of equity, I am of the belief that it would be better to do it sooner rather than later, that the fall, and look, in general, the spring is always better than the fall. I mean, we're probably going to come on, toward almost the end of the spring, but, there have been exceptions, but my experience being, doing this for quite a while now is that, the spring is always a better time to sell than the fall. But I think the things you point to, Paul, about the fall suggest that the fall could be much slower than the spring.
Yeah. What are you telling buyers? I mean, I'm telling buyers that you can be patient. You can be patient, but also that, prices coming down, and prices will come down, I think, on the whole, is not going to be uniform, right? That like house A and house B, even if the median price comes down 15%, let's just say, just throwing a number, that house A, they might only come down like 3%, but the other one, it might be a totally different story. So you can be patient, but at the same time, if you find a place that is your unicorn, then, waiting around is probably not going to get you that unicorn for cheaper.
Right. I would agree. I think we should see if people have some questions, and you could put them in the chat.
Billy, do we have any? Oh, Billy is muted, right?
Wait, I think Billy's back to being the host, no?
He is. I see a question from Will. Hi, Will.
Hey, Will.
Will asks, hey, hi, Billy. Will asks, I've read in numerous articles that people are looking to leave New York City after COVID-19. Is that reflected in what you're seeing? Well, I just got an accepted offer for somebody in Gowanus yesterday, and he's, I think, planning to stay in New York. We have a lot of interest in our property in Greenpoint, the ones where we had the accepted offer, and we are continuing to get a lot of interest. It's a home that has like 100 square feet of backyard. So, I mean, there is still interest there. Maybe that's counterintuitive, right? Because, I mean, I've gotten away to upstate a couple of times. I'm very fortunate that we were able to do that. And so, I think a lot of people are talking about it, and it's in the news a lot, but, that's the news, right? Like the news is the news, but it's also trying to sell something. So actually, when I saw this question came up, I went back because Leonard Steinberg did an internal survey on what agents are seeing. And here's what he found. He found in their survey, 18% of respondents said that they were planning to leave New York City within the next 6 to 12 months. But he said that percentage is not dissimilar from what a poll in January would have revealed. That there's always a solid number of New Yorkers who are contemplating a move out of New York City.
18% said that they were planning to move within New York City, but 80% said that they're not thinking of moving to the suburbs.
Yeah, I mean, I think a few things. I think Manhattan is different from Brooklyn. I think, Brooklyn is, for the most part, is less dense than Manhattan. And I think people, don't feel as great a need to leave. Not that some people won't leave. I think some people will leave. But I don't see this as any mass exodus. I think we're going to have to deal with how people get to work, but I think a lot of people aren't going back to their office 5 days a week. I don't think anyone is. So, look, I think this is all a work in progress. I mean, as I've said numerous times, if anyone told me I'd be sitting at home for 2 months, I would have said you were crazy. So, I think, our lives are going to evolve after this, slowly, carefully, which I think is good. because I don't think anyone wants to see, you know, a rise in the number of infections. But I don't think there'll be some mass exodus from the city. I don't believe so, despite not that there hasn't been a lot of press about this. Will, you're totally correct.
There
But I
might be
think I
an
saw.
I think there will be an increase in people buying second homes, vacation homes. I mean,
That may be
I know
true.
from my realtor in the Catskills that like she is seeing a bump, but that's people not buying a home. It's buying a, you know, a vacation home for somewhere between $200,000 to $500,000.
Right. Yeah, I saw there was another question in the chat, Paul. You wanna?
Yeah, I see a couple questions here, a couple interesting
Okay, good.
ones. Andrew Chen, I think that's my old coworker, Andrew Chen, maybe. If so, hi, Andrew. Thanks for coming. He says, while there may be activity in the future, what is your opinion on prices? Will they be flat, go down, or continue to rise as before COVID? So there's a lot of granularity there because there is what will happen to prices overall versus, you know, for any given property. And then also what you were saying about continue to rise as before COVID. So actually in Brooklyn, before COVID in 2019, actually the market was kind of flat. And it actually had just started to bump up in January and February of this year, right before all this happened. You know, we saw activity on for example, bidding wars. Bidding wars were not as aggressive, right? If you had 5 offers in a bidding war, it did not go as high over the ask as it would have with 5 offers 4 years ago. With that said, you know, my take is something I said earlier on, that I think that unicorn properties that where there's not a lot of compromises that a buyer has to make. It's just ready to go. You know, it's places with a lot of light, places with a great layout, fully renovated. Those are going to be highly desirable, and I don't think that those are actually going to lose a lot of value. I think it's going to be places where there are a lot of compromises that a buyer needs to make, where that's where the reduction in value will happen. And that's what I'm advising my buyers. I mean, it's hard to change the light, but if we can walk into a place and see a kitchen that hasn't been redone or a bathroom that's not updated, that's probably where you can get more of a discount. There's not going to be as much demand for that. And that's also why, since we're at Compass, it's great that we have Compass Concierge, because for our sellers, we can help by, you know, fronting the money to be able to improve that kitchen or bathroom, so that, I mean, that can really affect your leverage in a sale when you're on the sell side.
Yes.
Scott, what do you think?
Let's see.
There was also an interesting question here from David Byron
Brown.
Brown. What effect on real estate do you think a Biden victory would be versus Trump reelection?
I think Trump reelection could put a lot of sellers in the market, but I
think a Trump reelection could, well, you know, could be more, but I mean, look, Biden is not, you know, Biden's not Bernie, right? I mean, he's pretty moderate. I guess the question is, what Biden do you get? Like, what President Biden do you get? Do you get centrist Biden, or do you get progressive Biden? And what does that mean?
Well, I think, you know, my feeling is, you know, I think a Biden election would be very helpful. I mean, I have my prejudices here, but I think it, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic that that's what we'll see. And I think it would be good for the market. I think it'll bring stability, which we clearly don't have now. Whatever your politics may be, I don't think you could make a cogent argument that we have stability in the White House. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. So, yeah, I think it would only bode well for the real estate market nationally. But there are now some more questions Paul, you want to grab a few more?
Sure. That's a great point, though. And also, the stock market prefers, right, stability, right,
Yeah.
and predictability. We're in a cycle of volatility now. Will has a couple questions. How many questions should we let Will have?
At least one or two, maybe.
Okay.
He might beat me up later, but whatever.
Will said, I read that the House is thinking about a 2-year rollback on the SALT cap. That's very speculative. I don't know. Let's go on to the next one. His second question was, for landlords who have renters whose agreements expire in May or June, and landlords that don't want to renew, can they put their apartments up for rent? Well, that's a good question.
I don't know. Well, if they don't want to, if the landlords don't want to renew, I may be wrong, and we'll get some clarification and talk about it on Sunday. But I think there was some date that Cuomo floated, that until August. I'm not sure. I don't think a landlord could not renew a lease if a tenant wanted to stay until August. I believe they could stay, and I'm not sure it has anything to do with stabilization. But we can get more information about this, and we'll, revisit this on Sunday for sure. Did Barbara Rogers have a question?
No, she has a comment. She noted that if they're rent stabilized leases, a renewal is obligatory if the tenant uses it and if they're not in default.
Right, but I'm saying I believe in a non-stabilized situation, if a tenant wanted to stay through August, even though their lease was good through July, I think per Cuomo's, last declaration, I don't think you could ask them to leave early. I could be wrong. We'll get more clarity about this. And let's see. Paul, do you want to, let's see, what's the latest comment?
I own a rental property which will be available in August, which is typically slow, but the market is vastly different now. What do you foresee the demand will be? Well, I think in August, part of the reason why August is typically slow is because people travel in August, but I don't know how much traveling people are going to be doing this August.
Yeah, I think we're beginning to get ready to put some rental properties on, and my perception is the rental market is fairly stable. I think we might see some minor change in price, but I think the rental market is also quite stable. I mean, we'll find out more when there'll be more ability to show, but I think we're probably okay.
I would be concerned. I might be a little bit concerned about this coming winter. Winter is often a tough time. And if we do get a lot of layoffs, like white collar layoffs, then that could make getting an apartment, that's, a relatively high priced apartment, could make it tough to get it rented.
Well, the other change, which is still a bit in flux, but I mean, since there was a ruling that's still in review that landlords would have to pay the fee, I think, since tenants are we'll see, but I'm saying we already have landlords paying the fee. And I think that really reduces the costs of the tenants. So I think that will also contribute to a pretty, sort of flat, solid rental market, because if those trends continue, then you removed an expense for the tenants.
I mean, it's probably there's going to be a lot of granularity. The rental market is not one monolithic thing that moves all together. So, Barbara Ann asks, what about students who would normally be moving here in August if that doesn't happen this year?
Right.
That's one category of rental. So, I think it's one thing that you look at that versus, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Park Slope, maybe a different story.
Right. Right. It matters where it is, what it is, does it have outdoor space? All those things are going to figure into an equation about a rental, going forward here.
Yeah.
I think. Any more questions? Does Sammy have a question?
No, Tommy wants a cookie, I think.
Okay, good.
Or grab like an animal cracker. So
Okay,
I think
that's
he's
good. I think that's really good. So thank you, Stephen. So if you've enjoyed this, please join us again. We'll be back Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning. I know it's a little early, but you know, I think it's a good way to start the day. And thank you, Paul, so very much. And just everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and just have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, we'll have new numbers too on Sunday. And if you have questions that come to mind, you can always email us, the Scott Klein team at compass.com.
Compass.com. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.